Good afternoon and welcome to 3 o'clock with SAC. I'm Marisol Diaz, Communications and Digital Manager. Give me a second while I welcome our Spanish-speaking neighbors. Buenas tardes, soy Marisol Díaz, gerente de comunicaciones digitales y bienvenidos a 3 en punto con SAC. Si quieren acceso al programa en español, favor de marcar el número que aparece en la pantalla, que es 646-749-3122 y cuando le contestan la llamada, marque la contraseña que es 779-328-221. Si quieren ver episodios pasados, los pueden buscar aquí en nuestro Facebook en la sección de videos y también en YouTube. All right, now I'll go ahead and pass it over to the moderator of the day who will introduce today's topic.
Hi everyone, my name is Marlene Zaron. I am the Public Health Coordinator here at the Southside Organizing Center. I just would like to say that we also have our staff in the background that's working. We have Marisol Diaz, who is the producer of the forum, and we also have Alan, who is doing comments for you guys. So moving forwards, I'd just like to say that the staff and platforms for SOC are still available to you and the public. We are not doing in-person work, but we are definitely available to help you virtually. You can contact us for any resources within the community that you need help with by calling 414-672-8090. You can also go to our website at www.socmilwaukee.org to get any resources that you need regarding COVID-19, more information about, like what's happened post-elections, and other resources regarding housing and financial information during the pandemic. We also have an email address that you can contact us at soc@socmilwaukee.org. That being said, we do host this forum every single day, and we have different guests on for you, and we talk about different topics within the community. We do have a SOC survey that helps us analyze this information, analyze ways that we can do better, and other topics that you'd like for us to incorporate, and your feedback regarding the forum. Please complete that. The link for that survey is in the comment section. We always love to see what individuals are saying about the forum, and anything that you'd like for us to improve on. Definitely input is always needed. I'd just like to also add that all of the SOC staff is working virtually from home, and that's why you see us on the screen without a mask at this time. For those of you that are currently viewing and watching, I see a couple of individuals are watching. We love to see that. Say hi to us in the comment section and we'll say hi back. We love to interact with our viewers, and we love to see who is our viewing population. Just a quick disclaimer that the views and opinions shared today do not necessarily reflect those of SOC. So that being said, today is the COVID-19 day. We do have a segment for you. It is a pre-recorded video, and it's a video that you can find on YouTube. It's a COVID-19 vaccine video explaining the COVID-19 vaccine and COVID-19 vaccine latest updates. And that is by a doctor named Dr. Mike Hansen. He thoroughly explains the COVID-19 vaccine and everything about it. Just a quick announcement before we get into that. Tomorrow's guest on the forum is Lieutenant Lorenzo Williams. He is the Community Relations Director at the Milwaukee Fire Department. The topic will be fire safety tips. So that being said, we're going to play the Dr. Mike Hansen COVID-19 video for you.
Lead is a metal that was once used in paint, plumbing, gasoline, and other materials. Lead poisoning occurs when too much lead builds up in the body. Even at low levels, lead poisoning can harm the developing brains and bodies of infants and young children. Because there is no safe level of lead exposure, it's important to prevent lead exposure, especially for infants, young children, women who are breastfeeding, pregnant, or who may become pregnant. If your home was built before 1978, you most likely have lead paint on the inside or outside of your home. Frequently, lead paint is underneath newer coats of paint. Lead-based paint becomes a hazard when it chips, peels, cracks, chalks, or when home renovation projects disrupt the paint. When lead-based paint begins to chip or peel, it often resembles alligator skin, forming square or rectangular shapes that rubs off with a chalky residue. This creates dust or small paint chips. Cleaning your home in a lead-safe way is a fast and effective way to reduce exposure from lead. This video discusses how to reduce your exposure to lead in water. Milwaukee's water quality meets all federal and state guidelines when it leaves the treatment plant. However, lead is often present in drinking water because service lines and interior plumbing may contain lead. In Milwaukee, water service lines installed before 1963 may contain lead. Pipe solder, brass fixtures, and/or faucets made before 2014 also may contain lead. Lead can dissolve into the water when water sits in lead pipes for extended periods of time. To reduce the risk of lead exposure, Milwaukee Water Works adds food-grade phosphate to the water during the treatment process. This forms a protective coating inside pipes and plumbing fixtures. The City of Milwaukee Health Department recommends that infants who are bottle-fed, children with reported elevated blood lead levels greater than 20 micrograms per deciliter, and State of Wisconsin licensed and/or certified childcare facilities that are living in homes with or without a lead service line should use a certified drinking water filter for lead removal. Additionally, families with children under 6 years of age, children with blood lead levels greater than 5 micrograms per deciliter, pregnant women or women who may become pregnant, and breastfeeding women living in homes served by a lead service line should use a certified drinking water filter for lead removal. Not all water filters are certified to remove lead from water. When buying a water filter, make sure that it says NSF ANSI Standard 53 for lead. The following video demonstrates using a pitcher filter. Before installing any certified water filter, it's important to follow all manufacturer's directions for installation and recommendations on when to replace the filter cartridge. Remove the pitcher filter from the box. Slide the top of the docking station off. Insert the filter and place the top back on. Plug the cord of the docking station into an outlet. Next, fill the center console pitcher with cold tap water and insert the pitcher on the base of the docking station. The blue light on the docking station will turn on while the water is being filtered. The docking station will automatically filter the water through the filter. The blue light will turn off when water is filtered. Do not attempt to remove the filter before all the water is finished filtering. Wait 15 seconds before removing the pitcher from the docking station. After inserting a new filter into the docking station, it's important to discard the first pitcher of water. After the water has been discarded, refill the pitcher with cold tap water and insert the pitcher on the base of the docking station. Once the water has been filtered and the blue light turns off, remove the pitcher and place it in the fridge. It is important to always follow the manufacturer's instructions when replacing the filter cartridge. Depending on the filter type and your family's water usage, replace your filter cartridge every 3 to 6 months. Set a reminder in your phone or email. A good indicator when it is time to change your filter is when the flow of filtered water slows down. To help your filter last longer, do use your filter for drinking, cooking, preparing baby formula, frozen juices, or powdered mixed drinks. Don't use your filter for cleaning, washing dishes, washing hands or bathing, hot water. The only way to know if your child has been exposed to lead is to have a lead blood test. If you're pregnant, breastfeeding, or have a child under age 6, talk to your doctor about testing. All Milwaukee children should be tested 3 times before the age of 3. Some children may need to be tested up to age 6. This message is brought to you by the City of Milwaukee Health Department.
So, I think that was very informative. So, what we're doing right now with SOC is we are giving out lead pitcher filters and we're giving out lead faucet filters. And you can sign up for that and see if you're eligible by completing our survey that we have put in the comments section for you to complete. Once you complete it, I or one of my other coworkers will be in touch with you to have you send us a picture of what your faucet looks like to see if your faucet would work for one of the faucet filters. If it does not, we will give you a pitcher filter. If you want a pitcher filter right away, we can also do that as well. So just let us know, fill that survey out, and we're here to help you reduce the level of lead in your water. Now we're going to try to play the Dr. Mike Hansen COVID-19 video for you. He's going to explain the COVID-19 vaccine and essentially the difference between Moderna and Pfizer vaccine. They do the same thing. It's just that one has different side effects than the other. They're the same side effects, but one has just like, like an extra, one might be like having chills, but everybody's different the way they react to the vaccine, either the Moderna or the Pfizer. And he's going to go over, like what's exactly in the vaccine and other important facts.
And we're finally beginning to see the light at the end of this pandemic tunnel. But the bad news is we are experiencing the worst of this pandemic with record cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. And it's going to continue to get worse before it gets better. And it's going to take time before the entire public has access to the vaccine. And once the vaccine is available to everyone, we need people to take it in order to shut down this virus. A lot of people ask the question, how is it possible a vaccine that under normal circumstances would take years to approve could be ready to roll out so quickly and prove to be so safe? Well, even before coronavirus broke out a year ago, drug companies were working on designs for new types of vaccines called mRNA vaccines or messenger RNA vaccines. And part of the reason is so that they could quickly adapt to a pandemic strain of virus. Also, researchers have been studying the first SARS virus since that outbreak in 2002 and 2003. I think I was only 22 back then. But anyway, because this SARS-CoV-2 virus is so similar to the first one, scientists have had a jump start in this regard too. There are other contributing reasons why we have these vaccines so quickly, like the logistics of Operation Warp Speed and drug companies being able to remove some of the business and financial aspects of vaccine development. Let's rewind for a second, back when I made my third coronavirus video, posted back on February 9th of this year. One of the first steps is to successfully get that novel coronavirus gene and insert it into the messenger RNA platform successfully and allow it to express proteins. He says we've succeeded in doing that. The next step is to put it in a mouse animal model to induce immunogenicity and to get the company to make gold nanoparticle products. He says all of those have been successfully implemented. He later says, if that continues, we'll be in phase 1 trials in people within the next 2.5 months. And that's what happened. And now we're at the point of having 2 of these mRNA vaccines that are about to get FDA emergency use authorization, and then the CDC about to give the green light to get these vaccines in people's arms. And shipment has actually already begun. We're talking about the Pfizer/BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines here. And there's other vaccines on the horizon as well that are not mRNA vaccines. So there are 6 vaccines getting some kind of federal government support in the United States and dozens that are being developed around the world. Several of these are in phase 3 clinical trials, which is the last step before seeking the go-ahead from the FDA, at least in this country. With the 2 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna, they synthetically make messenger RNA, which is a genetic blueprint that signals to the cells of the body to start manufacturing a specific protein in the body. Not just any protein, but part of the spike protein of the virus. The body's immune system then says, hey, we don't recognize this spike protein guy. We should kick him out of the club. So the immune system reacts accordingly, except when the immune system reacts accordingly, it's a whole cascade of events with white blood cells causing a whole bunch of commotion, sending chemical signals to other parts of the body through the blood with cytokines, interferons, interleukins, and antibodies. Antibodies are proteins that bind to pieces of foreign invaders so that the body is protected the next go around. In this process, sometimes there could be symptoms as a result, such as arm pain, maybe a little fever, body ache, headache, nausea, fatigue. And this is sometimes what happens with the flu shot. Some people think that when they get the flu shot, they actually get the flu from the flu shot, but that's actually never the case. It was an immunological reaction to the vaccination, which is basically the body saying, hey, I'm responding to this vaccine in the appropriate way. But back to these mRNA vaccines for COVID-19. They come in 2 doses to be taken a few weeks apart. Why is that? Because the first dose, also known as the prime dose, although it does the job, it's less than ideal, meaning the level of protective antibodies that are developing there, they're there, but they're not as high as we really want them to be. They're like down here. We want them up here. So with this initial prime dose, the antibodies take 2 weeks to develop. But then we want the second dose, the booster, to get the immune system reactivated.
It was Catherine Brewster who had me reactivated.
Once that reactivation takes place, immunogenicity is achieved typically 7 to 10 days after the booster is given. And when people do experience the immune reactions from the messenger RNA vaccine, it's not with the first dose, typically, it's after the booster dose. The independent board that analyzes the participants in the study found that severe side effects included fatigue, muscle pain, joint pain, and headache. Less than 2% had fevers of 39 to 40 degrees Celsius that lasted a day or two. For the Pfizer vaccine, the numbers were lower. Severe side effects included fatigue and headache. Now, compared to the flu shot, including the high-dose flu shot, these numbers are actually slightly higher. But otherwise, the trials showed that these vaccines are safe and they're very, very effective. In Moderna's clinical trial, they gave either the vaccine or placebo to 30,000 people. Of the 15,000 who received the vaccine, 11 developed COVID-19. Of the 15,000 who received the placebo, 185 developed COVID-19. That's 94.1% efficacy. None of the 11 people who received the vaccine became severely ill, but 30 of the 185 who received the placebo did become severely ill, and one of them died. The vaccine had similar efficacy for elderly people and for people in the racial minority groups when they did the breakdown of the groups. And in Pfizer's clinical trial, the vaccine actually was 95% effective, and one study participant who received the vaccine developed a severe case of COVID-19. So both of them give 95% efficacy against symptomatic disease and almost 100% against severe disease. But there are still some unknowns though, like how long does the protection last? Does it protect against asymptomatic disease? Does it prevent people from spreading the virus to others? Do I still need the vaccine if I've already had COVID? Is the vaccine safe for me with my underlying medical conditions, such as whatever that may be? We know that protection from the vaccine is at least as good as protection that comes when someone has an actual infection. We know this protection lasts at least months and probably about a year. This is based on the levels of protective antibodies that are being measured in studies. And this data is going to be published in a peer-reviewed journal in the near future. But if you are vaccinated, you probably have a low likelihood of transmitting it. The same is likely true if you've been previously infected. But again, we're waiting on studies to know for sure. And if you've already had COVID-19, do you really need the vaccination? At this time, the recommendation is yes, because it's thought that there's probably better immunogenicity with the vaccine, but this is not 100% certain. Because this vaccine is not live attenuated vaccine, it's safe for people who have underlying medical conditions, including those with compromised immune systems, for example, cancer patients who get chemotherapy. But for pregnant women and breastfeeding women, we don't know if it's safe because there are no trials yet. So for now, no vaccine for these women. The 2 messenger RNA vaccines have to be stored in super cold temperature. Why? Because mRNA is super fragile and therefore has to be cased in lipid nanoparticles. So these nanoparticles are tiny fat chemicals called lipids, which that's what triglycerides are. That's what HDL and LDL are. Well, lipid nanoparticles protect the fragile mRNA from being destroyed. But lipid nanoparticles, just like butter, start to soften and melt if it's too warm. So Pfizer's vaccine must be kept at temperatures of minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is minus 75 Celsius, which throws a big wrench into the whole let's plan on making and distributing hundreds of millions of vaccines plan. And that means special equipment is needed to transport and store this vaccine. Moderna thinks its approach is better and said its vaccine can be shipped at minus 20 degrees Celsius and can be kept stable for 30 days at 2 degrees to 8 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature of a standard home refrigerator. So distributing these vaccines is going to be a huge challenge, to say the least, not only because of this, but also because of the necessary manufacturing of vials and other equipment on such a massive scale, especially with these mRNA vaccines. And these vaccines alone can't cover the entire US population, at least not yet. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and Novavax all have vaccines in phase 3 clinical trials. AstraZeneca's vaccine, made in Britain at Oxford University, is an example of a vector vaccine, which is one of the traditional ways of making a vaccine. In this instance, it uses a common cold virus, specifically it's called an adenovirus, to carry a very specific piece of DNA into the cells of the body. This DNA, once inside the cells, then codes for a specific RNA that ultimately codes for a specific protein, the spike protein of the coronavirus. Then the immune system does its thing. Now, some people might say, well, I don't want an adenovirus being injected into me to accomplish this. Relax. This adenovirus has been genetically modified in a lab to be harmless. Cheers to science. Although it is a slower way of making vaccines and it's cheaper, it can be kept stable for 6 months at standard refrigerator temperatures. AstraZeneca reported that their vaccine prevented coronavirus infection 62% of the time when people got 2 doses a month apart. But in a subgroup of volunteers who got a half dose followed by a full dose a month later, the vaccine was 90% effective. So overall, it averages out to about 70% efficacy, and there aren't any safety concerns based on these studies. Then there's Janssen's vaccine, which is owned by Johnson & Johnson. It's also a recombinant vector vaccine like AstraZeneca's vaccine. And there are other vaccines on the horizon as well, like Novavax, Sanofi, GlaxoSmithKline, Sinovac, Sinopharm, that use other vaccine methods. Some of them use protein subunits. Some of them use killed coronaviruses. But we don't need to get into those for this video. So who is going to get this vaccine and when are they going to get it? The FDA has a group of vaccine advisors called the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, or VRBPAC for short. This group is made up of outside experts who don't have a stake in any of the companies making coronavirus vaccines, and they're independent of the federal government. They're meeting December 10th to decide on giving EUA for Pfizer's vaccine. They meet again on December 17th for Moderna's vaccine. Once the meetings happen, there's going to be a decision that's soon going to follow on whether or not to give the green light on the vaccine, and the federal government's Operation Warp Speed has promised to start delivering vaccines within 24 hours of the green light. Pfizer and Moderna have already been making these vaccines to get a head start on the process and expect to have 40 million doses at the end of December. In this country, there are 21 million healthcare workers, 3 million long-term care residents, 87 million essential workers, 100 million adults with high-risk medical conditions, and 53 million others who are 65 and older. So total from these groups is 264 million people. The first group of people to get the vaccine, the so-called phase 1A of the vaccine rollout, is going to be healthcare workers and people who live in long-term care facilities. For healthcare workers, that includes those in the hospital who deliver food and clean patients' rooms. Then we can expect 50 million more doses to come available in January, and then another 60 million for February and March. That adds up to 150 million doses, enough to fully vaccinate 75 million people because it's 2 doses per person. January might include some of the rest of the phase 1 of a 4-phase vaccine rollout. It's around this time you can expect phase 1B rollout. So this is going to include the education sector, utility workers, firefighters, correction officers, and the police.
That's the sound of the police.
By the end of January or February, expect states to start shifting their vaccination campaigns to pharmacies and medical practices. AstraZeneca is likely to seek U.S. approval by January. Johnson & Johnson has said it will have efficacy data by January or February. Novavax is a little farther behind, but all of these companies will be producing vaccines and expect them to be rolled out in the early spring. It's possible that the U.S. will still be in phase 1 of vaccination in March, simply because of the sheer numbers involved. So for people who do not fall into the categories that I just mentioned and are under the age of 65, well, they're going to be getting the vaccine most likely in April. That's the expected phase 2 rollout. And then the expected phase 3 rollout will be most likely June or so. The UK has become the first Western nation to authorize a COVID-19 vaccine, with the first doses to be rolled out this week, probably as you're watching this. The UK has ordered 40 million doses of the vaccine, and that's enough to vaccinate 20 million people. And they also have a similar rollout strategy. So I was alluding to this before, but I'll explain it in more depth now. Before a vaccine is submitted for FDA authorization, there's an independent data monitoring committee, the DMC, that reviews clinical trial data to confirm that it's safe and effective. The committee is made up of career scientists who have experience serving in the DMC, and they have relevant expertise and experience in clinical trials. And this is in according to the FDA guidance. They also monitor study conduct and even consider interim changes depending on new data that may emerge from other studies. About half the trial participants in these studies must be 2 months past their second vaccine shot, as severe adverse effects are more likely to happen within the first 6 weeks. So the DMC looked at these studies by Moderna and Pfizer, and they said there weren't any safety concerns. If most of the country gets vaccinated by the end of next summer, we'll probably go back to normalcy again by next fall. If 30 to 50% of the population don't get the vaccination, we won't get there. In a recent Pew Research Center survey, 60% of respondents now say that if a COVID-19 vaccine were available today, they would take it. Among those not willing to get the vaccine, about half of them, or 18% of US adults, say it's possible they could decide to get vaccinated once more information becomes available, but 21% of US adults are pretty certain more information will not change their mind. We're still going to need masks and distancing, etc., until we achieve herd immunity and when the numbers are significantly down. Remember, even if you are vaccinated, we don't know for sure at this point if it's still possible to transmit the virus, although it's pretty unlikely. So to give a date on when this will likely happen, probably next fall. Now, some might say, well, aren't the symptoms that you get from the vaccine, like the arm pain, like the fatigue, like the fevers, chills, sweats, nausea, isn't that worse than actually getting the coronavirus infection? Well, first of all, less than 10 to 15% of people who get the vaccination will have these side effects of the vaccination. And the other thing too is, well, even if you're young and healthy, that doesn't guarantee that you don't get sick from coronavirus. So yes, some people might actually have worse symptoms from the vaccination compared to if they were actually to become infected with coronavirus. But the key word there is some. This is going to be a very small number. And also, by getting the vaccine, you're contributing towards society's common goal of reaching herd immunity and ultimately moving on from this pandemic. Are mutations going to affect the vaccination? Well, there have been some mutations in this virus, but not that are very significant. There haven't been any significant mutations that are particularly concerning when it comes to the vaccination aspect of things, but also for the infectivity of the virus. And it's likely to remain this way. Okay, I'm exhausted, but making this video is important. I hope people get the vaccine, and I hope this pandemic fades away. And I hope that you share this video with others, because we need as many people as possible to understand the importance of this vaccine.
All right, so that was a really good video. I just like to share that the phases that he talked about regarding, like who's in group 1A, 1B, that was on a national level. This is more on a I'm going to talk about how Milwaukee is approaching it and how the Milwaukee Public Health Department is approaching it. So in Milwaukee, group 1A, we have healthcare personnel, and residents of long-term care facilities. Those are people in Group 1A. Group 1B are adults age 75 and up, and it includes frontline essential workers. That includes first responders, such as firefighters and police officers, corrections officers, food and agriculture workers, U.S. Postal Service workers, manufacturing workers, grocery store workers, public transit workers, and those who work in the education sector, such as teachers and staff members, as well as child care workers. Individuals in Group 1C are people aged 65 to 74 years old, people aged 16 to 64 years old with medical conditions that increase their risk of severe COVID-19 symptoms, and all other essential workers, such as workers in transportation, water and wastewater, food service, shelter and housing, finance, such as bank tellers, information technology and communications, energy, anybody in the legal sector, anybody in the media sector, and public safety individuals and public health workers. Those are individuals that are in Group 1C. So once everything in Phase 1 completes, then we'll move on to Phase 2. And you can get all of this information in a link that we're about to share in our comments section through the city.milwaukee.gov/coronavirus-resources/COVID-19 vaccine. And you can find all of that on there, for the phases and all of that. And it does say on the site, the vaccine will be more widely available to the public sometime this summer. So it's important for everyone to still have high hopes and to continue wearing your mask and socially distancing everywhere you go until we have 60 to 70% herd immunity. So that being said, we did play our lead video, and now we're going to move on to our civic section of the forum, where Gabe has prepared a video for us about the Supreme Court and how it's explained.
Old TV shows made it seem really easy to appeal to the Supreme Court, like when this lady wanted to fight her speeding ticket.
I am going to win this case. If not here, I'll appeal to a higher court. If necessary, I'll take it to the Supreme Court.
Or on Gilligan's Island, when Thurston Howell is locked in a bamboo jail and he says,
I'll take it to the Supreme Court.
But even though they make it sound like a right, nobody is entitled to an appearance at the Supreme Court. That's entirely at the discretion of the justices. And they choose very carefully. Only a small number of cases get to the Supreme Court, and it's getting smaller. Roughly 8,000 cases are submitted each year, but only 80 cases are accepted. That's a 1% acceptance rate. And to get to that 1%, most cases start at the bottom. The federal court system consists of 3 layers, and the lowest is the district level. If you lose in a district court, you can appeal to the circuit level. Most of the United States is divided into 11 circuits, but there's a 12th for DC and a federal circuit that mostly hears patent and military cases. Above the circuit level is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, as long as you don't count the basketball court that's above the Supreme Court. And to get to the Supreme Court, nearly all cases require submitting something called a petition for a writ of certiorari.
The writ of certiorari, which is shortened usually to writ of cert.
A petition for the writ of cert is a written request asking the Supreme Court to hear a case, instead of asking the court to resolve the facts of a case, which are nearly always settled in lower courts. The reasons for granting the petition concern important questions about federal law.
The overarching goal of the court is to make sure that federal law is the same across the country. And so by federal law, I mean the U.S. Constitution and laws passed by Congress.
Professor Green clerked for Justice John Paul Stevens, where he became very familiar with cert petitions. That's because the clerks review cert petitions for their justices, who then choose to grant a petition if it passes the rule of 4, meaning that 4 justices want to hear the case. When the court does not grant cert, it does not imply a decision.
It doesn't mean that it agrees with the lower court. It doesn't mean that the individual justices agree with the lower court decision. It just means that the court has decided that this particular case is not a case where the court is going to choose to set the law for the whole country.
If cert is granted, a case probably falls into one of three categories describing most Supreme Court cases. The first is a case of national importance, such as when the court decided Bush v. Gore in order to help determine who had won the 2000 presidential election.
Drawing on very rarely used legal powers, the Supreme Court has, for the first time in American history, decided to step into a legal dispute in the midst of a presidential election.
A second type of case is when a lower court issues a ruling that invalidates federal law. An example is Gonzalez v. Raich, in which Angel Raich, a California woman, challenged federal drug laws after agents destroyed marijuana plants she had been consuming for medical use. On her appeal in the Ninth Circuit, judges ruled in favor of Raich, deciding that she was compliant with the state law authorizing her use of medical pot. But that ruling conflicted with federal law prohibiting marijuana use.
So when the Ninth Circuit said it doesn't apply, that means if you're a medical marijuana user in California, then you can use it without fear of federal prosecution. But if you are a medical marijuana user in Florida or in New York, then it's still banned under federal law.
By ruling on the case, justices were able to establish the authority of federal law prohibiting the use of medical marijuana.
In the Raich case, the Supreme Court overruled the Ninth Circuit and said that the federal drug laws can apply to local marijuana use, which means that someone like Angel Raich can still be prosecuted under federal law, even though she can't be prosecuted under state law.
Third, the court accepts cases in order to resolve a split decision in the lower courts. This happened in the case of Obergefell v. Hodges, where a Sixth Circuit ruling that banned same-sex marriage conflicted with rulings in other circuits that had upheld the right to same-sex marriage.
The Obergefell was someone living in Ohio who wanted to marry his same-sex partner and was not permitted to do so under Ohio law. It made its way to the Sixth Circuit. The Sixth Circuit said you have the right to be married because you're a same-sex couple. And that created a split, a division of authority between the Sixth Circuit, which governs Ohio, and a number of other circuit courts. And so once that happened, it was fairly clear to, I think, most legal observers that the Supreme Court was likely to hear the case because it meant that the federal law, the federal constitution in this case, applied differently in Ohio than it would in Pennsylvania, for example.
By ruling in favor of Obergefell, the court resolved a circuit split and made same-sex marriage a right nationwide. But these three categories are just a framework for understanding why the court might select a case. They are not rules. Ultimately, which cases get to the court depends on the decisions of individuals, the sitting justices of the U.S. Supreme Court.
I'm going. All right. So that was great. So now we have our survey SOC promo.
Has this live forum been informative and useful to you? What part of the forum could be improved or changed to make it better? Please take a quick survey that's located in the comments section so that we can keep 3 o'clock with SOC going for residents. Thank you for tuning in.
All right. So just some reminders for the rest of the week. Tomorrow we have Lieutenant Lorenzo Williams coming on. He's the Community Relations Director from the Milwaukee Fire Department. And that is all I have for you guys for today. And now we have our funder partner thank yous.
Hello, SOC viewers. My name is Kaiser Strock, and I live in the Polonia neighborhood. We would like to thank everyone for supporting our 3 o'clock with SOC live show and for completing our SOC survey. In addition to thanking our residents for tuning in and sharing our show, we would also like to thank the following sponsors: Wisconsin Voices, Community Development Block Grants, Neo Philanthropy State Infrastructure Fund, Movement Voter Project, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the Zilber Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, Tides Foundation, City of Milwaukee Promise Zones, and all the faithful individuals who support our SOC through their personal donations. Thank you.